Our next topic and presenter is migrating populations. And I hope I have the photo right this time. Dr. Matthew Natcher from French Guiana. So he's originally trained as a dermatologist, then switched to epidemiology. We have the right photo, right?
No, that's not me.
And so he has published over 240 scientific papers and book chapters and have several grants and research projects, notably on HIV. He's also interested in health and access to care of the most socially vulnerable populations. His topic is migrating populations.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for the invitation. It's very rare that I talk about migrations in French Guiana because it's like the elephant in the room, and you have to be very careful about what you say about migrating populations. So I never talk about it. I think about it all the time, but I never talk about it. And talking about it's a broad topic, so keeping with the elephant image, I'm going to use the blind man feeling the elephant approach to try and capture some of the very slippery aspects of migrations, because we often don't, there are many loose ends in this program. So, is this what you see? Yeah. So when you midline migration, HIV, South America, or Caribbean, there are only 3 pages, which is not much given the importance of migration in HIV. If you think about it, it's a pandemic, so the virus went from country to country, it migrated, it went from the forest to the city, then from the city to other cities, then it spread throughout Africa rapidly, it spread to the Caribbean, the United States, and the world, and all this is, of course, migrating populations. And the blue arrows are the B pandemic viruses, and the orange arrows are the B Caribbean, which I'll talk a bit more after this. Now, if we look at migrations, this is a map from the New York Times that surprised me, because now, if you want some fun trivia, the United Arab Emirates has 88% migrants in the country, which surprised me. But if you, French Guiana is here, and we have a lot of migrants in French Guiana. And if you look at migration around the world, intra-continents, and the continent that has the highest increase in migration is Latin America, and it includes the Caribbean. And when you zoom in the Caribbean, as someone was saying, the Caribbean is a complex region with a complex history, and you see there's a lot of migration, a lot of emigration, and towards the States, towards Europe, towards Canada. And if you zoom here, we see migration towards the Guyana Shield, and in French Guiana here, the green square is emigration, the orange square is immigration, and you see in French Guiana we have more immigration than emigration. Now, if you look at the GDP per capita, because most people, a lot of the migrations are for economic reasons. It's a big fantasy that people will migrate for health reasons. Minority do, but most they just go to another country in search of a better life. And if you look at the GDP per capita, you see French Guiana is way up there. And when you look at the age pyramid, you see that over half of the adult population are immigrants. So, and the population, okay, you have a lot of youth, and the population will double in 15 years. So that's how fast the population grows. So I will talk about some models, but it's very difficult to model French Guiana when you have such important fluxes. The models all models are false, some are useful, someone said once, but you have to be careful. Now, this is basically about 3/4 of the HIV cohort are immigrants. In Cayenne, the main city, so French Guiana is 260,000 people, the main city is 100,000, so over half of the patients in Cayenne are from Haiti, and in Saint-Laurent-du-Maroni, over half are from Suriname. And basically, that's the river. There's a river between Suriname and French Guiana, and people don't really know the border. They're from the river. They're not from one country or another. So migrants are vulnerable to HIV. Recently, there have been waves of immigration, and we've had patients who arrived in, like from Haiti or the Dominican Republic. There's human trafficking. So you have, I think it's 4,000 US dollars. Some people will take you, and they have different routes. And we've had patients who declare they have been raped, or there was abuse, there's prostitution. So the migration itself is a risky timing for them. This is well known in the Caribbean, the sexual tourism movement of prostitutes. It's also true in something I'll talk about, but in between Brazil, Suriname, in the gold mining sites, there's a lot of mobility. We see some patients who it's not a majority, but some come because there's stigma against MSM or transgender people, etc. And so we did a study using a questionnaire study of about 1,000 migrants, and we asked them. About a third had high risk behavior, and when we compared with the locals, it was significantly higher. So there is indeed, even when the migrants are in French Guiana, there are opportunities for prevention, for primary prevention, for information. But it's tough because they just arrived, they don't necessarily know the system, and they're hard to reach. Now, among the issues that why I keep this subject quiet is because people say usually, oh, but they bring the HIV. Well, we did a study using modeling and CD4DK, and it showed that, in fact, in French Guiana, over half of infections among migrants occurred in French Guiana. So, and we'll see with the molecular biology data, you find that this is true also for French people, for Brazilian people, for Latino people. And often you see that migrants are tested later, and there is recently we also tried to calculate the duration between infection and diagnosis, and so this is still using the method from Price in England, this model, but what it shows is Brazil and Suriname have are populations on the rivers, deep in the forest, like the Maroni River between Suriname and French Guiana, and the gold miners populations, who probably often come very, very late. And this is a very preoccupying thing because we see that in like the border with Suriname, and this population that lives deep in the Amazon forest, this area is a hot spot where we see the number of new cases going up and up and up, whereas in Cayenne, it's more stable and easy going. So there are really some very strong territorial heterogeneity. So it's something that's important to take care of. And of course, most patients with advanced disease, or I took less than 200 CD4, are immigrants. They come only when they are really, really sick. So, and this is also the illegal gold miners in the forest. So you probably in French Guiana you have 15,000 illegal garimperos working deep in the forest. I don't know how many are in Suriname, in Brazil. So there you have a mobile, very mobile population with no health facilities who are, and the prevalence is 1.5%. So that's, and there's a lot of prostitution going around. And when the sex workers have no condoms, they pay with gold, and they go to the forest for 3 months, they have no more gold, they continue working for a higher price. So it's very hard. And also loss to follow up, when we look, this is from the cohorts, of course, not surprisingly, because some migrants will come to French Guiana and then try to go to Martinique or Paris, because I think it's better for them. Now, if we try to look at another angle, look at what does the virus itself, if you look at the polymerase gene, like since 2005, we've been doing the systematic resistance testing for all patients before they start ARVs. So this is the data from Gonzalo Bello from Fiocruz, and it shows the B Caribbean viruses in the Caribbean, and in many of the Caribbean islands you have a lot of B Caribbean. The exceptions are maybe Cuba and Puerto Rico, who seem to have different epidemics. The U.S. Virgin Islands, Martinique also, where there's a strong component with mainland France. And this shows you that French Guiana and Suriname, we're Caribbean by the viruses. We have mostly B Caribbean. There is no data from Guyana, and if there's anyone from Guyana, I would be curious to know if there are any sequences, because the sequences may tell an interesting story. And this story is, this one is when you look at Brazil. Brazil has a very different, it's mostly B pandemic or F, not B Caribbean. But the 3 states that have over 10% B Caribbeans are Roraima, which is just next to Guyana, where there's a lot of mining in the hinterlands. Maranhão, a lot of the, you take the plane from Paramaribo, Cayenne, Belém, you have 1 gold miner on each side of you here, shore. And they go straight to Maranhão. It's one of the poorest Brazilian states, and it's not surprising. In Amazonas, where also there's a lot of gold mining. So there's some kind of connection between the Caribbean and South America. And so difference between globally, Brazil is very different from the Guyana shields. And the Guyana shield is connected to Holland, to France, to the UK, but you find very few, a very low proportion of B Caribbean. And also when you look at the clades, the viral clades from Europe, you find very few of them on the Guyana shield. And so this looks like it's all in green is the same, but it's not the same. And when you look deeper, and this was done with our resistance testing since 2005, and not this one, but what you see basically, this color fan shows that you have different colors for different islands. So there's the epidemics, the viruses are encapsulated by cartography. And for French Guiana, we also find here for French Guiana and Suriname, you see that the viral clades are very individual. And most viruses that were analyzed, over 500 samples, they are regional viruses with several back and forth. And so the populations on the Guyana shield move around, and the viruses are global. So, and you can do with Bayesian analysis, you can trace that in history and see the different migrations, and you find a very complex thing, but you see this kind of all these movements here on the Guyana shield that tell the history. So same for B pandemic. We find this B pandemics are regional from the Guyana Shield. And if you look at the dynamics, it shows that for the major clades, there was an increased exponential phase in the 1990s and more of a plateau. And the reproductive number is between 3.5 and 4.7, which is similar to what is observed in Africa or in Europe, but much lower than what you see in MSM epidemics. So, to summarize, the HIV pandemic is linked to human migrations. Migrants are at higher risk of acquiring HIV during or after migration. In the Caribbean and in Latin America, epidemics are mostly encapsulated. In Latin America, it's the same. It's like regional sex networks that support epidemics. Whereas you see with the B pandemic in Europe and the States, you cannot see such, and it's probably because from island to island, it's not so easy to go. People migrate, but then or in Latin America, when you have the Amazon, like between why Brazil and why the Guyana Shields, but not Amapá, the northern state of Brazil? Because between French Guiana and Macapá, you have 600 miles in the Amazon forest. Now, that's a bit of a barrier, if you So, the Guyana Shield is very Caribbean, and it's a particular different from Brazil or other places. And the fight against HIV cannot be fought within borders. It makes no sense when you see that it's a broader problem. And so that's why this type of meeting is important, so that people... Now, we're talking about 1990. So, the last, maybe in April I did this, it was about 85, 92, 92. The 85 I got from the ECDC model. And so it's about what we want. But this doesn't account for the patients who are lost to follow up. Because some of the papers in Europe where they say, oh, it looks so nice, and no loss to follow up. Well, we have plenty of patients lost to follow up. So it's a bit of, but it's nice. It's a nice target. But what we see here in this very is that for 20 years, and we've tried so many things, for 20 years, the proportion of HIV of patients diagnosed with less than 200 CD4 and with less than 50 CD4 has not decreased. We've tried everything, and maybe not everything, but we've tried a lot of things. And it's like a wall. So the 90-90-90, and when you look in France or in Europe, it's similar. It's 30%. I think Greece is 25%. I don't know how they do it. But the 90% of HIV patients knowing their diet, maybe in Sabah, maybe it's easier, but it's, I don't know, it's really, it seems like how do you get below that point is really maybe the major challenge. Now, I use the ECDC and the spectrum model. So when you look at incidence rates, we made some progress. But since I told you the population will double in 15 years, when you look at the actual number of new patients per year, it's rather stable. So what do we try to do? So we try to reach out. Primary prevention and communication should be tailored to all the languages of all the migrants that we have. And communication, when you have small populations, is no longer communication, so it's very difficult to reach. We started to use PrEP in sex workers in small numbers, but in this situation where you have these patients who arrive and are at high risk, maybe it's a possibility, and some have started PrEP. HIV testing is coupled always with mediators. In the US, maybe they call them patient navigators or health mediators. who will take the patient VIP to the wards and talk to the doctor so everything will go smoothly and the patient feels welcome, because they are often undocumented and they will renounce care if they meet someone who is a bit, they will generalize and mean, I am not worthy, I do not have rights for this. So it's important to have someone that opens the door and shows that they can get care. Retaining patients in care, also health mediators are important for that. And one social measures, so as in Suriname we have health residence permits for patients who have HIV, and they can get everything free, all the tests, all the drugs. And one thing is some patients are reluctant to go towards HIV, so when we look at the top 5 causes of early death before 65, you have cerebral vascular disease, you have things like diabetes and HIV. It's to go in the field, maybe some people will want to have their blood pressure taken, but then you can do a test on them and vice versa, and you might find people with high blood pressure and prevent strokes from happening. So it's a win-win situation for all the big oops. Yeah. So, as I said, the political context is very difficult. And if you see French Guiana and you see the United States, the solution with less than 15% was build a wall. So I'm joking, but it's not really funny. This is a view of Cayenne in front of the Red Cross last year. Lines of immigrants from Haiti waiting to get, because the traffickers, I don't know, maybe they do a PowerPoint to them, but they explain them the rules, where they should go and things. So they go to the Red Cross, so they get the yellow fever vaccine, so they get a stamp, and they know that this is T0 for their presence on the French soil. And after 3 months, you're entitled to get certain insurance and things like that. So it's very clever. But then you had these demonstrations with people who are really shamelessly racist, and so it's very difficult. That's why I say I never talk about this in French Guiana or in the press. You have to be very careful about the questions they throw at you, because they're looking for a culprit. And but I mean, if you look at it, migrations are a reality, and we are physicians. We swore an oath. We have a universal health system, so we need to, and there are ethical, moral reasons for treating individuals who are sick. Plus, there are utilitarian reasons to treat them too. So, I mean, why should it be a problem? So, that can be an argument. That's usually the argument. We say, well, we'll prevent the spread of the epidemic. So you have to be, it's a difficult subject. So anyway, I think I'm finished. Yes.
Questions and comments?
Maybe
There you are.
let's say I find it curious that you have a Caribbean strain and a endemic strain of the bee, because if you look at how it migrated from Haiti and then it went to the US, but I think with migration it would also be the same Haitian strain going into the Caribbean. So that's why I found the difference in evolution. Yeah, I find it curious. Do you have an explanation for it?
Well, the reason why we have these encapsulated epidemics in Latin American countries too is I think that the communication between countries is more difficult than I guess within Europe or within the States. But It's quite, that's what the virus says. But you have B pandemic too. But the B pandemics have a signature from the Caribbean or Latin America. Maybe some exceptions would be maybe Martinique, countries like Martinique where you have, in the MSN community where you have a number of MSN maybe from Paris or from mainland France who come to.
Thank you so much. I think this was a wonderful biological explanation of why we are here and we're a region and how this virus is really local but at the same time universal. So we need to have local strategies but also universal and global strategies as well. Thank you so much.